vlog is all about Formula E. Thank you very much to everybody who sent me their questions over the weekend following this weekend's Formula E race. I'm now off to the pub, obviously on the electric skateboard, to go and answer as many as I can. And just like the location for this weekend's Santiago E-Prix, it's chilly, man! Woohoo! Much warmer in here, so let's start with this one. Paul Matthews, thank you very much. Who has the quickest season 4 package? Right, really simple question, not a simple answer. The answer to that is that what we've seen so far from the first 4 rounds is that some teams, some packages seem to suit certain tracks, and that's great because you know it's going to mean this championship is going to ebb and flow in terms of performance and who's strong and who's not. Clearly the Techeetah and that Renault drivetrain that they have got in their car was very quick this weekend in Santiago, ran this type of circuit. But I think the Mahindra is also a good all-rounder. They struggled this weekend because they didn't get their tyres to work in qualifying and therefore started a long way back. They, I think, perhaps have one of the best all-round packages. Audi have a great performance package, but clearly at the moment they haven't got the reliability, and that is hitting them hard. So not an easy question to answer, but I think that's great that we don't really know who's got the best. There's no clear out-and-out favourite, which means we go into every race not really knowing who's going to come out on top. Sarah Dart has asked, and lots of people have asked this actually, how do you feel about Techeetah modifying a major safety part and just getting a fine, but for a paperwork issue someone gets disqualified? What you're all talking about there is, this has stirred up quite a bit of interest. The 2 Techeetah cars that came first and second in the race, and Jerome D'Ambrosio's Dragon car, were fined after the race for modifying the seat belts, new safety belts for this race, and it looks like what they've done is to put like a tie wrap or cable tie on the lower belts to create a kind of makeshift handle for the mechanics to get hold of those belts easier, to do them up quicker, because we lost the minimum pit stop time for this round onwards. So the faster you can do those belts up, the quicker you can get back in the race. It clearly worked because Techeetah had the fastest pit stop of anybody, but crucially they did not ask the FIA's permission to modify those belts, and that was where the problem was. So no argument that they broke the rules. The argument or the discussion comes when you look at Daniel App's disqualification in Hong Kong for what was effectively a clerical error. His team had logged a part number with the FIA that didn't match the part number that was on the car, and he lost his victory. He was thrown out of the race. Whereas Jean-Eric Vergne, who won the race this weekend, his team just suffered a fine of 15,000 euros, I think it was. And the argument, and I think a justifiable argument, or certainly a question that's being asked, is where is the consistency between those punishments? Because it doesn't seem fair. And I think Daniel Abt and his team have every right to feel fairly begrudged by the 2 different penalties there. It's something that happens across motor racing in general. All we want is consistency from the stewards, consistency when it comes to dishing out penalties, and that's something they've got to get on top of, because that's a serious discrepancy between the 2. Elise Akaboom, thank you very much on Twitter, and again lots of people asking this question: what on earth's going on with Audi? What's going on with Audi is that they are suffering heavy reliability problems. I think that is a sign of just how hard they're pushing the development. This was a complete ground-up rebuild for their car for this year. You know, almost no parts carry over from last year. And that's a sign of how hard teams are now pushing the technology in these areas. They're trying to make the inverter, which is one of the areas that cause lots of problems on their car, small and light as they can. And that means you start pushing the limits of of how easily it can be cooled or how tight the packaging has to be, and that is when you run into reliability issues. It looks like that's what's happening to them. The problem they've got is that this hardware now is locked down, it's homologated with the FAA, and they can't change it. So they've got to find a way to get around that by using it differently. But it's something they've got to get their heads around very quickly before this championship disappears from view. Floody D, thank you very much. How much quicker will the Gen 2 car be with the improved drivetrain and battery technology, and are treaded tyres still to be used? So yes, treaded tyres are still to be used. That's something that Michelin would absolutely insist on, because they, like lots of people that have got involved in Formula E, are using the platform to develop and push their own core products. So the tyres, the all-weather tyres we use in Formula E, are very similar to the Michelin tyres you can buy for your own road car, and that's crucial to their involvement, so they stay. How much quicker will the new car be? Well, we haven't got the exact technical specifications yet. That will be unveiled when the car is unveiled for real in Geneva, at the Geneva Motor Show, beginning of March. What we do know, though, is from drivers who have driven both cars, both the current car and the new car in testing, say that there is a significant performance advantage with the new car. And that is brilliant, because what we've got now is a car that will do the entire race on one battery, and it will go faster, be able to push it harder at a higher power setting than we currently run. It shows how much that battery technology has developed in just 4 years or so since the original battery was created. So a real tick box for Formula E there. That's why the series was created, and it just shows that what we are doing is pushing the limits of this technology so hard, things are moving forward probably much faster than they would do out in the real world, if you like, rather than putting it into this competitive environment of motorsport and Formula E. DH15, thank you, on Instagram. Do you think Formula E will overtake Formula 1 in the future? And if so, when and why do you think this will happen? In the short to medium term, no, I don't think it will, and I don't think they're actually trying to at Formula E. I think they both can exist in different areas. Formula E are trying to merge motorsport with a much more entertainment-based platform. And I think that's right. They can both be at the top of their own individual games and coexist. What interests me is, if you fast forward, say, 20 years, will it become so socially unacceptable to burn combustible fuels and pump gases that we know are killing the planet into the atmosphere from cars for our own entertainment? Will the youngsters of today, who will be the fans of these sports in the future, just find that so unacceptable that it just can't happen anymore? Will it become illegal? Will Formula 1 have to change completely their model to become more sustainable, to become fully electric? Who knows? So in the future, I think it's going to be really interesting. Could it be that Formula E takes over at that point, or does Formula 1 have to find something different for its huge fan base across the world that it already has? But in the short term, medium term, no. In the long term, a really interesting question that I don't think any of us know the answer to just yet. Hola Aidan on Instagram, thank you. When will Formula E go from a unified car to what we have in Formula 1, a car that can be anything as long as it follows regulation? So in Formula 1, the teams get given a set of regulations, can go away, can design whatever they want as long as it works and matches up to those regs. In Formula E, we've got a standard chassis, we've got standard aero, standard bodywork, standard brakes, front suspension. All those things are standard on every car, and only the electric drivetrain and everything back from the battery rearwards is open for development. That's very deliberate in Formula E, because those are the areas, A, why the championship was set up to develop that technology, but it's also the technology that's critical and crucial to the electric vehicle market, and that's why manufacturers are getting involved. So we don't really want to open up the rest of it in Formula E, because it sends costs through the roof. We don't really want an aerodynamic development race, or a chassis development race, or a development race on brakes. We want a development race on electric mobility technology, because that is what is going to be beneficial to us all before very long. Garns41 on Instagram, thank you. With so many ex-F1 drivers taking part in Formula E, do they find the Formula E cars too slow? The answer is no, I don't think they do. There's no point in trying to hide the fact that these Formula E cars are not as quick as a Formula 1 car, but that's fine. You know, they race in very different circumstances in city centre street tracks around the world, where it's all about short, sharp bursts of acceleration. The acceleration on these cars is fast. You know, they're not ever going to be racing at Spa or at Monza, where you need absolute top speed. And the biggest thing, when you ever talk to a driver in Hungary, they always say that these are perhaps the most difficult cars they've ever had to drive. The challenge of driving these cars is enormous because there's so much going on from the driver's point of view in the cockpit. As well as the fact that we've got low grip tyres, we've got no aerodynamic or very low levels of aerodynamic downforce. We've got bumpy street circuits with manhole covers and painted white lines that can be slippery. There's an awful lot for a driver to manage. The walls are very, very close. And because of those things, because it's so difficult, that's why we get mistakes happening. We get people spinning, we get crashes, we get all the things that make Formula E so exciting. So it's not about making these cars go super, super fast or as fast as a Formula 1 car. It's about making them difficult to drive, and that's exactly what we've got. One of the things that always makes me chuckle is people who comment on videos and post questions and complain about Formula E, saying, you know, I'll watch Formula E when it's as fast as Formula 1, when it's as loud as Formula 1, and when it goes to proper circuits like Spa and Monza, just like Formula 1. It makes me laugh because you guys, if you're making those comments, you should count yourself really lucky. You've got exactly what you want. It's called Formula 1. So go and watch Formula 1. People who want Formula E to be like Formula 1 are kind of missing the point. Andrew Morris on Twitter, thank you. Another great Formula E race. He says, but one thing I noticed was that the Renault Edams car was consuming more power than the rest of the field throughout the race. Was this a Renault specific problem, or was it due to high temperatures? First of all, Andrew, got to pick you up on a slight error there. They didn't consume more power, they consumed more energy. And I know that might sound pedantic, but it's one of my bugbears. The difference between energy and power in Formula E is something that's often talked about incorrectly. The amount of energy is what's stored in that battery, 28 kilowatt hours. The power is the setting that's set on the steering wheel, 200 kilowatts in qualifying, 180 kilowatts this year in the race. The Renault Edams was using more energy from the battery than some of the other cars around it, meaning that, you know, yes, it was running relatively inefficiently compared to some of its direct competitors. That could be a Renault specific thing. I think Renault have pretty much carried over last year's car into this year, which was a class-leading car, but some of the other teams around them have completely redeveloped the technology, and I don't think it's a case of Renault falling backwards, but everybody else catching up. The other thing was that it was very hot in Santiago, and temperature plays a crucial role here. So if your package is inefficient in controlling temperatures, then you can't push the car as hard without losing some efficiency and some performance. So I think a combination of both of those two things with Renault. But yes, you're absolutely right, that's one of the areas that they are struggling with this year, over and above the last few years when they've been utterly dominant. But that again, great for the championship. We've got some real tough, tight competition going on. Right, tech question from Craig Humphreys about the inverter. If the inverter's fair game for development, just how much of a performance differentiator does it offer compared to, say, cooling efficiency, and which would you prioritise? The inverter does a simple job. It converts the DC current in the battery into an AC current to be used at the electric motor. So that job, it has to do its job, it has to be efficient in doing its job, but it's not a huge performance differentiator in itself. The differentiator comes with how small and how light you can make that package. And it may be that Audi have just gone too far in that, pushing the limits too far in trying to make it small and light, and therefore they're having reliability issues. The cooling performance, the cooling efficiency offers a bigger performance differentiator in itself, because if you have a very efficient cooling package, you can make your radiators smaller, therefore creating less drag on the car. You can also push the battery and the motor to greater limits, push them harder while still keeping in the normal operating temperature windows, so without losing performance. So it's not that you can prioritise one over the other, they both have to be prioritised, because in the upper ends of any type of motor racing, when you're pushing the limits, the only way you get a fast and high performance car is by maximising absolutely everything. And that is what teams like Audi have really tried to do. Perhaps they've gone a little bit too far. Nico Naves on Instagram says, why do you think people criticise Formula E so much? Look, you always get people criticising something that's new and different, and that's just life. That always happens in pretty much every walk of life. You know, what I find frustrating at times is that the criticisms I find hard to understand when people say it's boring. Formula E is not boring. I mean, come on, sit and watch a race. It isn't. It's anything but boring. It happened a lot more in the early days, I have to say. Lots of the critics have been silenced by the time now we're in season 4, and that will only continue because Formula E is on a path that's going from strength to strength, and justifiably so. Right, I think that's probably enough for today. Apologies if I didn't get to yours. I can't get through them all because the video would just be too long. But thank you so much again for everybody who has sent questions in. I'll try to answer the ones I didn't get to on the YouTube platform if you've got them through on there or on social media. Please do keep them coming. I'll try and do these after every race, so after every Formula E race and also after every Formula 1 race on the Monday after a Grand Prix as well. So please, as I say, keep the questions coming when I drop you a line to ask for them. Much appreciated. But for now, thank you very much. Oh, don't forget, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please share it around with your mates. See you next time.